Chapter 91 Solution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Vader froze everything and stepped into the messy classroom, carefully stepping on areas that were not contaminated by dung bombs. Then he restored the cockroaches and spiders to their original sizes and watched the helpful insects scurry into the cracks in the corners of the wall. Looking up, someone even looked grateful to him for this. Vader was speechless for a moment, looking at the ground, the walls, and the bodies of Malfoy and others. There were remnants of dung bombs everywhere, green smoke was rising from the broken glass, and the ground was corroded by something, making a hissing sound. The Slytherins were petrified in various struggling postures. Some were crying with snot and tears all over their faces, some were so frightened that their eyes were straight, and some were covered in red, swollen, and terrible scabies for some unknown reason. They all looked painful. Only Daphne in the corner was slightly better. She was not injured, but she was also frightened and had a few spider threads stuck to her body. Vader not only had questions in his mind, this is it? He thought that Malfoy had prepared a dragnet, and that's why he dared to cause trouble again after suffering a loss last time. Unexpectedly, he just wanted to rely on people to ambush him. Vader thought about himself. He had prepared a dozen spells and specially practiced 5 different combinations. In order to be able to successfully cast the spell in the shortest time and attack while on the move, he practiced privately in the Room of Requirement for a long time. The Room of Requirement only provided wooden targets. In order to train himself, Vader found various small insects as sparring partners. Grow big quickly was one of the spells he often used during this period. Of course, spiders and cockroaches are a bit too much to challenge the limits of reason, and Vader himself can't stand it. He usually looks for emerald green mantises with 2 big knives. At this moment, for Vader, he had just said hello to his opponents, and all of them fell down, and they also let out miserable wails in a car-to-car collision posture. It seemed that his previous preparations were a bit redundant. Scourgify. Vader waved his wand, and the green liquid and dung bombs disappeared, leaving only a lingering smell. Then he used the flying curse to take away everyone's wands, and then lifted the petrification curse. The classroom suddenly erupted into loud cries and screams. Stop arguing, Wade said with a frown. In an instant, all sounds disappeared. Vader walked towards Malfoy. The blonde boy suddenly turned pale with fear, kicked his feet on the ground and shrank back, screaming, You, don't come here. Vader pressed his shoulder with the collected wand, squatted down, and looked seriously into the other person's eyes. You know. If you are my enemy, I will break your wand right now. Malfoy was stunned for a moment, and after a long while he stammered and trembled. You can't. To a wizard, the wand is no less than half a body. Some adult wizards cannot even cast simple spells without the wand. If the wand is damaged, it can be replaced with a new one, but generally speaking, only the wand that was chosen as a child and has accompanied the wizard as he grows up is the most suitable and most faithful. Most wizards' wands will accompany them to the end of their lives and then be buried with them in their graves. This is a companion from birth to death. In the classroom, someone sobbed. Of course, I won't do that. Vader looked at Malfoy's relieved expression and continued, but it's not because of who your father is or who your grandfather is. It has nothing to do with any of this. It's just because we are classmates, we should be friendly to each other, right? Malfoy. Look at the swelling on my body, smell the stink on my body. Do you know that spider almost ate me just now? Do you know what it feels like to be hugged by a spider's legs? Is this also called getting along well? Yes. Master Malfoy lowered his head and said softly. Thank you, it's great that you understand. After all, I just want to study hard and don't like to cause trouble. Wade originally wanted to pat him on the shoulder, but when he thought that these people were covered in dung bombs just now, his raised palm fell down again. Malfoy, on the other hand, followed his movements, and his heartbeat became violent and tightened, and he began to feel a dull pain in his chest. When he heard Wade's words, he almost cried. Is this devil-like guy really the Ravenclaw he knows? Who among them is Slytherin? Also, can you please stop bullying my friends in the future? Don't use those dirty tricks again, otherwise I will be very, very angry. As a person, I will definitely avenge myself. This said very sincerely, if you think you can ignore my warning, you'd better defeat me first. I personally welcome all fair challenges. Malfoy just stared at him blankly, showing no reaction, and no one else spoke to him. Vader, who was talking to himself, began to feel a little embarrassed. He put down the Slytherin's wands and turned around to leave. Before leaving the house, he suddenly turned around Malfoy, who had just touched his wand, threw it away again with a snap. Not quickly hid behind Goyle, and everyone else was also startled. Don't be so nervous. I just want to ask, Wade asked, you won't complain to the professor, right, saying that you were scared to tears by spiders and cockroaches? Only one person knows about the shameful thing, and it is the same as the whole school. Ridicule, I think the difference is quite big. Don't you think so? Everyone's expressions froze, especially Malfoy. He didn't know how many times he had made up his mind in his heart, tell the professor, tell Dad, break your wand, get you expelled, but Wade seemed to hear his inner voice, and smiled gently and said, you just used the magnification spell to play a joke on your classmates, you won't be expelled, we still have more than 6 years to spend together. The previous misunderstandings are over, and we will get along well in the future, okay? Everyone understood his threat and nodded very stiffly. Wade laughed, very good, then it's settled. Not long after Wade walked out of the potions classroom, he saw Michael and Padma peeking around the corner. Seeing him coming, the two jumped out from the corner and looked around Wade. Are you not hurt? Padma asked hurriedly, I just heard a lot of screams in there. It's okay, I didn't suffer any loss. Wade said. Cool. All solved. Michael said excitedly, let's go quickly. Someone wanted to go over and check, but we stopped them. I wonder if they will call Professor Snape. The three hurried away along the corridor, and a big eye appeared at the corner. Wade turned his head and blinked, with his right hand behind his back, making an OK gesture. The elf McGee grinned and also stretched out his slender fingers to reply OK. Then he hid in the shadows, his big ears swaying, listening to the movements of the Slytherins. Chapter 92 Change, Learning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As Vader expected, the Slytherins did not complain to the professor. 7 or 8 Slytherins ambushed a Ravenclaw of the same age, and ended up losing the battle. He was so frightened that he cried in the end, this kind of embarrassing thing even if you talk about my dad every day. Malfoy didn't want others to know. After Wade left that day, several people supported each other and went to the school infirmary for treatment. The reason was that the potion accidentally exploded while practicing in private. This kind of mistake is very common for students, but it is too outrageous that so many students were injured. Madame Pomfrey believed that Professor Snape had not fulfilled his management responsibilities and complained for more than half an hour. Snape, who heard that many students in his college were injured, hurried to the school infirmary and heard Madame Pomfrey's complaining voice before he entered the door. Snape was confused. He didn't know anything about the situation and thought it was really his responsibility, so he could only stand at the door with a gloomy face and get scolded. After all, Madame Pomfrey was already the school nurse of Hogwarts when Snape was studying in school. He always had conflicts with the James Potter Quartet, was often injured, and received a lot of care from Madame Pomfrey. Now Snape and Dumbledore can fight each other, but he always keeps his temper in front of this lady. Although he said nothing, his cold eyes swept across the faces of several people one by one. Snape could tell at a glance that the red and swollen patches on their bodies were all caused by failed scabies potions, but after having attended potions class for more than half a year, who could make such a stupid mistake? If it were Neville Longbottom of Gryffindor, or Seamus Finnegan, the explosion expert, then there would still be some possibilities. After Madame Pomfrey went to take care of other students, Snape walked over and asked, "What's going on?" Malfoy, whose face was smeared with potion, lowered his head and couldn't see his expression clearly. He whispered, "I was not careful, Professor." Snape narrowed his eyes. Draco Malfoy's posture made him feel a little familiar, just like what he himself said to others more than 10 years ago every time he lay in the school doctor's office, but he did it because he knew that even if he told the truth, no one could help him, and it would lead to contempt and even more bullying. Draco Malfoy has always been pampered by his parents, and he doesn't know how high the world is. Why did you hide it for the perpetrator? But since he was beaten by a group of people, Snape didn't bother to care. He actually always felt that with Draco Malfoy's arrogant and mean-mouthed attitude, it would be a matter of time before he was beaten. At noon the next day, Michael and Wade went to the auditorium to have dinner together. When they met Slytherin, Michael was subconsciously nervous, but saw that the two people, Millicent and Nott, both lowered their heads slightly. And waited until they walked over before continuing to do what they were doing before. What did you do to them? Michael asked in disbelief. Wade thought for a while. You may not believe it, they gave up resistance before I even entered the classroom yesterday. Michael looked at him suspiciously, then nodded clearly. If it is a secret that cannot be told, then just pretend that I haven't asked. It's not really a secret. Wade said slowly, I can also show it to you guys. I hope you won't be scared. How scary can it be? Michael didn't believe it at first, then thought of something and asked anxiously, You got a boggart? That a boggart is a shape-shifting magical creature that can transform into a person's worst fear. Wade shook his head. That's not true. If there is a chance, I would like to see it. Several Slytherin girls headed by Pansy passed by, and when they saw Vader, they nodded unnaturally. After encountering him several times in a row, Vader found that the attitude of those Slytherins, at least some of the first-year Slytherins, towards him had changed subtly. It was not resentment, contempt, or waiting for revenge, but a faint hint of fear. With some admiration and adoration, Slytherin students all seem to have some strong-willed mentality. This thought flashed through Vader's mind. Without Slytherin to target him, for Vader, college life was mostly occupied by studying. He didn't even go to the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. He just heard that Harry caught the golden snitch in only 5 minutes, and Snape, who was the referee, was said to have a very ugly face. The difficulty of the Traceless Stretch spell is unexpectedly high, especially what Vader wants is to create a storage box that looks like a small world like Newt Scamander. The difficulty is even higher. Professor Murray advised him not to worry. In his spare time, Wade also built 2 alchemical works to practice his skills. One is a slowly rotating Mobius strip with a little man walking on it forever, the other is a machine that automatically sweeps and mops the floor. The little crab sometimes sprays colorful bubbles that make people feel happy. Both Hermione and Padma can't put it down. By the way, on Sunday afternoon, Vader also brought his insect sparring partners to the Umbrella House, which resulted in an unprecedented high-pitched roar. Harry used a very powerful disarming spell to blow away the forelimbs of the mantis. Hermione also successfully used the iron armor curse for the first time, and Michael used a blazing burst of fire to burn the spider until it screamed. It turns out that although the insect sparring partners are ugly, the teaching effect is very good. By the end, even Neville has made obvious progress. When Padma was besieged, he actually jumped onto the spider's back and inserted his wand into the huge compound. Lupin's magic teaching has also begun. The first thing Vader proposed to learn was the spell of extracting memory. Lupin, can I know, why do you want to learn this spell? In the Friend's book, Lupin's words are cautious. He implicitly advises, according to the regulations of the Ministry of Magic, any spell that tampers with other people's memories is illegal. Vade, the user is myself. After a moment, Vader's answer appeared on the paper. I forgot something important and must remember it. In addition, I also want to learn brain occlusion. Do you know it? Lupin, of course. During the Wizard War, we all had to learn how to prevent the enemy from getting information directly from our brains. But to be honest, I am not an expert in this area. The person who is really good at this kind of magic should be Severus Snape. Vade, I just need to know the conventional practice methods. At least I can't let others sneak into my brain silently and seize my will. Vade would not go to Snape to learn brain occlusion, because people who are good at closing the brain are often good at soul reading, but he can't let anyone see through his thoughts and memories. Still, communicating through the Friend book makes him feel safer. Even if the learning effect is a little worse, Vader can slowly improve through practice. In the room where every request is answered, Vader finished writing a line of words, and while waiting for Lupin's reply, he looked up at a grey stone basin placed on a stone pillar. The stone basin is flat and wide, empty inside, without a drop of water. There is a circle of gems inlaid on the outside, which look sparkling and gorgeous. Chapter 93 Heart-to-Heart Talk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a practice, Harry quietly discussed with Michael in a low voice, what should Ron do if he also wanted to join the SSC? Will Vader agree? During this period, every time Harry studied and trained in the Umbrella House, he felt very happy and felt a sense of accomplishment even if he was injured. But as soon as I returned to the dormitory, this happiness disappeared quickly like a popped balloon. Ron hadn't spoken to him for more than half a month. Sometimes he would pretend not to see him when he saw him. During class, Ron would always run to talk to Seamus or Dean, the other two guys in the dormitory. A boy sat together, and the two were no longer inseparable. Although the SSC was very good, Harry also missed the time when he and Ron were lazy together, played wizard chess together, and complained that the homework was too much and too difficult. Ron was the first friend he made after entering the magical world, and Harry cherished this friendship very much. He thought that if Ron could also join the SSC, then they might be able to return to their past. Michael asked a few questions, and after learning what was going on, he already gave Ron a cross in his heart, and once again lamented his foresight. Michael thought for a moment and said, Harry, I understand that you want to reconcile with your friends. But have you ever thought about it? Friendship needs to be maintained by both parties. Can you tolerate his temper? Does he understand you? What's the problem? Harry was stunned for a moment, then said, I did promise to help Ron with questions before, but I broke my promise. That's another question, Harry. Michael said slowly, I think that if someone wants to join another established group, he should take the initiative to show his ability and willingness, and use sincerity, hard work or talent to gain everyone's recognition, instead of asking his friends to intercede for yourself. It's going to be difficult for both of us. He looked into Harry's eyes and said, First of all, it's you. I guess these words must have been pressing in your heart for a long time. Every day you are embarrassed about how to speak and whether you will be rejected. You are nervous and worried about this all day long. And then there's us. If someone doesn't like Ron Weasley, then he's going to be in a dilemma whether he should refuse or be patient. Will it hurt the relationship between us if he refuses? Friendship. In fact, when Hermione wanted to let Harry join, Michael wanted to say this, but Wade's words convinced him. Harry Potter's parents died for the war, and their orphans should certainly receive preferential treatment. Hermione always had a motherly affection for Harry, which Michael found understandable. Once these Gryffindors take someone into their hearts, they are so passionate that they want to tear their hearts out, but Michael cannot tolerate them constantly bringing people in. After joining Ron, will he join Seamus in 2 days? Dean. In a few days, will all the other Gryffindor students be brought in? Michael didn't say it outright, but his disapproval was made clear. Finally, he said, Weasley turned what was originally his own problem into a problem between us. And during this time, what was he doing? Cold war with you, Harry. If he breaks up with you over such a trivial matter, does he cherish this friendship? Or is he determined that no matter what he does to you, you will take the initiative to reach out and make peace with him? Harry fell into a long silence. When they returned to the Ravenclaw lounge, Michael told Wade about the incident, and then asked, Do you know what Harry Potter experienced before he came to school? I heard that I grew up with Muggle relatives. Vader said, and everyone knew about this. Michael sighed. His relatives probably didn't teach him well. Harry might not even have friends before. How do you know? Padma came over and asked. He's pretty good. It's impossible not to make friends, right? Although wizards are accustomed to living in isolation, Padma and the others also know that children from Muggle families always stay in groups. During holidays, they occasionally play with children living in nearby villages. He behaves a little humble when getting along with his friends. Michael said puzzledly, even if his parents died, he was the savior. Why is this? I thought Harry Potter should be even more proud, even as arrogant as Malfoy. Muggles probably don't understand the meaning of the boy who lived. In their view, Harry must be the scumbag left behind by his relatives, right? Wade said while flipping through the book. Padma listened with rapt attention and murmured, "That's no wonder." "What?" Michael asked. "Didn't you notice?" Padma said, "The clothes under Harry Potter's robes always don't fit well. I thought that was some kind of trend in Muggle clothing." The two discussed various speculations in low voices, and Wade turned another page of the book without speaking. In his impression, Harry Potter had been abused by his aunt's family when he was a child, but when he grew up, the relationship between the two parties seemed to be reconciled. I don't know if it was the original plot or the fan interpretation that left an impression on him. But recently, Wade also noticed a strange sign. Harry's attitude towards Professor Quirrell suddenly became enthusiastic. Every time they met on the road, he would give him an encouraging smile. It was said that he also began to actively answer questions in the defense against the dark arts class. Hermione did not dare to stop him blatantly and could only watch. His behavior made many people nervous. Snape wandered around Harry more frequently, making Harry think that Snape was following him and wanted to catch him and put him in detention. He even missed 2 days of SSC training for this. On this day, during the SSC training, Neville, whose wand was hit again, seemed to have suffered a great blow. He was in a daze for a long time, which made everyone very worried. Wade motioned for others to continue training, walked over and patted Neville on the shoulder, and asked, "Want to talk?" Neville nodded sullenly. The two walked to the side and sat on the sofa. Wade did not rush to talk, but poured a glass of water first and drank it slowly. Neville was silent for a long time before asking, "Wade, my disarming spell gesture is correct, and the spell is correct, right?" "Well, you are almost more standard than Hermione." Wade said affirmatively, with some doubts in his heart. "But I still always fail." Neville lowered his head, scratching the gap on the table with his fingers, as if he felt that what he wanted to say was difficult to say. "Is it because I am too stupid?" he asked in a low voice. "I don't think you are stupid. You performed very well in the herbology class, didn't you?" Wade said, "The reason why you have never learned the disarming spell may be because you are not confident enough. If you doubt your magic, it can't respond to you well." So, Neville hesitated for a long time, and finally asked, "It has nothing to do with the wand, right?" Chapter 94 Magic Wand, Dragon Egg. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Vader didn't understand. What does it have to do with the wand? Neville looked at his wand, scanning every familiar scratch on it, and whispered, "This is not my wand, it was left behind by my father. My grandma originally did not agree with me carrying it. She said if it were not my own wand, the effect would be greatly reduced, but He insisted on taking the wand with him instead of going to Ollivander's to buy a new one. It was as if his parents were with him. Neville always felt powerless when casting spells with this wand, but he didn't take it to heart. Because he had long accepted the fact that he was clumsy, cowardly, and not very talented, and even often wondered why he was sorted into Gryffindor instead of Hufflepuff. In fact, when he was in the sorting house, Neville argued with the sorting hat for a long time. He thought that he did not have the courage required by Gryffindor and asked the hat to sort him into Hufflepuff. But the sorting hat insisted that he should go to Gryffindor, and finally announced the result of the sorting. However, after joining SSC, Neville could feel his steady improvement every day. The curse began to become less difficult for him. For the first time, he gained great joy and sense of accomplishment. Therefore, when he encountered another setback in spell learning, he could no longer tell himself calmly, "Yeah, you're just so stupid and can't do anything well." He knows he can actually do it, but his chosen partners are holding him back. Neville complained to his grandmother in the Book of Friends, and Mrs. Longbottom once again told him in strong words, "Put down those useless persistence, you need to get a new wand that suits you." "Vade, tell me, what should I do?" Neville asked confused. Wade knew that when he hesitated about this, he already had a preference in his heart. Just going against his long-standing insistence was like asking him to let go of his feelings for his parents, so that was why he was so embarrassed. Wade thought for a moment and said, "Why don't you let the coins decide?" "Coin?" Neville, who was immersed in confusion, was dumbfounded. Vader took out a silver sickle from his pocket and clamped it between his fingers, and said, "Front, continue to use the wand left by your father." Even if you have to work 10 times or 100 times to reach the normal level, you will give up. Shika turned half a circle between his fingers. On the flip side, treasure the longing and love for your parents in your heart, choose the most suitable wand, gain more power, become a son that your parents can be proud of, and have the power to protect others. Do you see clearly? Neville swallowed hard, nodded, and stared at the silver sickle nervously. Vader glanced down and saw Neville's hands clenched into fists, crumpling the corners of his clothes. Then, let's begin. Wade said, and with a flick of his fingertips, Yinxico quickly spun and flew high into the sky. Neville raised his head involuntarily, his eyes following the dazzling silver light as it rose, then fell, and his heart suddenly rose to his throat. Wade covered the silver coin with his palm and slowly opened it. Gudong. Neville's throat surged, and his palms broke into cold sweat. Just when Silver Sickle was about to be revealed, Wade suddenly grabbed his hand again. Ah! Neville couldn't help shouting, I haven't seen it yet. But you already know, right? Wade asked, what is the answer you really want? Neville was stunned for a moment, as if there was a loud thunder above his head. Wade stood up and left, leaving him alone on the sofa to think slowly. How is Neville? Theo came over and asked worriedly. It's okay, he will figure it out. Wade said, looking down at Silver Sickle in his palm, suddenly smiled, and put it in his pocket. What the hell? It turned out that fate was also favoring this stupid kid, but, rather than being pushed by fate, it would be more appropriate to make a decision after careful consideration, right? In a blink of an eye, it was the Easter holiday again, and this time professors of various subjects assigned a lot of homework. With only 2 weeks of spring break, most students won't choose to go home. Neville applied to leave school, and he was going to Diagon Alley to pick a wand that really suited him. Vader also applied to leave school, but he only went home to spend the holidays with his parents on Easter. The rest of the time he spent studying spells with Lupin in Hogsmeade. The spell to extract memory is not as advanced as Vader expected. If the memory provider concentrates on recalling and is willing to give it actively, this spell can become very simple. Forcibly digging out the memories that the master wants to hide is a form of advanced black magic. Occlumency requires long-term practice, and the most basic requirement is to clear your brain. No thinking, no recall, no perception. Advanced techniques involve weaving false memories and emotions in the mind to fool Agiliomancy masters. During the holidays, Vader made the most progress in the Transformation Curse and the Disguise Curse, and he also learned how to use several fire spells. Lupin also taught him some tips that could be used in school, such as spells to check whether there are typos in papers. Vader returned to school the day before school started. When he distributed the Easter eggs to his friends, he noticed that the 2 Gryffindors looked nervous and worried. What's wrong? Wade asked. This. Harry and Hermione looked at each other, and then Hermione said sadly, it's Hagrid. He got a dragon egg and even planned to hatch it. Wade recalled, I remember this is illegal, right? Yeah. Harry said with a frown, what if someone finds out? Hagrid doesn't care at all, he just wants to be a dragon mother. Well, it's quite Gryffindor. Wade complained in a low voice, and seeing that the 2 were very troubled, he said, I know a friend who works as a breeder for Mr. Scamander. Maybe you can hand over the dragon egg to them to help hatch it. Or ask someone to secretly transfer the dragon egg to a place where breeding is allowed. Of course, in the surprised eyes of the 2, Wade added, the premise is that you can convince Mr. Hagrid to give up his current plan. Private individuals cannot raise dragons unless they are willing to go to Azkaban. This is not an easy task. Hagrid is born to love all dangerous creatures, and raising dragons is his lifelong dream. Even though he knew that Harry and Hermione's worries were right, he couldn't convince himself to give up the cute, unborn dragon baby. The half-blood giant's eyes welled up with tears when he thought about the little guy's life after leaving him, or even being caught by wizards to draw blood and cut out dragon liver. This dragged on until the dragon baby was about to be born. Chapter 95 Hatching. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Expelliarmus! Neville shouted, and Hermione's wand fell out of her hand and landed on the cushion next to her. Successful. Hermione exclaimed happily. Without picking up the wand, she rushed over and hugged Neville first. "That's great, Neville." Theo clapped vigorously, then helped Hermione pick up the wand and return it to her. Neville finally smiled and said happily, "I tried it when I was at home. My grandma was also very happy. She said that my father didn't know how to disarm the curse when he was in first grade." "Is this a new wand?" Michael looked at his wand. "Yes." Neville showed his new partner to everyone. "Cherry wood, unicorn hair, Mr. Ollivander said it suits me very well." When choosing a wand for the first time, every little wizard still remembered the wonderful feeling of finding half of their body. They touched Neville's wand one by one and said with certainty that he would become an excellent spell master. While they were chatting and laughing, the door of the umbrella house slid open. Neville looked back and saw a frowning Harry walking in, shouting enthusiastically, "Harry, you're here too." "Hello, Neville," Harry said hastily. "Oh, Hermione, great, you're here too." "Michael, do you know where Vader is?" "He went to the library to borrow books and should be here soon. Do you have anything to do with him?" Michael said. "It's Hagrid." Harry said, "He asked me to invite Hermione, Neville and Vader to the hut." "Gamekeeper? That big guy?" Michael raised his eyebrows slightly. "Students at Hogwarts often see Hagrid's cabin across the lawn, but not many go near it." Because in the eyes of the students, the unusually burly Rubius Hagrid looked very scary. Some students thought he was just a servant of the castle and didn't even know his name. As for the name of the gamekeeper, it is actually more related to the Weasley twins. It is often said that those two people were captured by him from the Forbidden Forest. Unexpectedly, Harry had a good relationship with him, but why did he invite Vader? While talking, Wade also came in from the door holding a book. After hearing about Hagrid's invitation, he put down his book and they went to Hagrid's hut together. On the way, Harry told them, "Hagrid said that the baby dragon is about to hatch, and he wants us all to see it." After all, not many people can see the scene of the fire dragon hatching with their own eyes, right? Under Hermione's disbelieving eyes, Harry's voice became smaller and smaller. "I can't believe it, he even knew he was raising a fire dragon." Hermione said angrily, "He lives in a wooden house." Hermione," Harry whispered, "at least don't make a noise today. Hagrid is looking forward to." Hermione tensed her face and nodded reluctantly. Arriving at the door of the cabin, Harry stepped forward and knocked. Hagrid opened the door, looking very happy. "Hurry up, you're just in time," Hagrid said excitedly, "the baby is coming out soon." Harry walked in and his steps suddenly froze. Ron was also sitting in the cabin. He turned his head and looked over, then quickly avoided their eyes and stared at the dragon egg, as if he was studying the patterns on the shell. Hermione looked at this and that, a little at a loss. "Come in quickly, don't be stunned." Hagrid was completely unaware of the subtle atmosphere between the few people, and with a sweep of his hand, he called them both into the room. He lowered his head and said to Wade, "I'm glad you can come too, Wade. Not many people have seen the scene of a little dragon coming out of its shell. I guess you must be interested, right?" "Of course, thank you for the invitation, Hagrid." Wade smiled and said. He walked in, ignored the awkward looks of the three people, sat on an empty chair nearby, and looked at the dragon eggs on the table with great interest. "This is a dragon. Even though it's a western lizard dragon, who wouldn't want to see it?" When he sat down, Wade felt like he had seen something strange. He raised his head and saw a bunch of slender and soft white hair hanging from the ceiling, hanging together with several copper pots, like some ethnic minority decorations. In Hagrid's messy hut, those white hairs had an unusual smoothness and sanctity. Hermione couldn't wait to find something to talk about, and immediately asked, "What kind of animal hair is that, Hagrid?" "Oh, it's unicorn hair. It was pulled from the tail and hung on the branches in the forest." Hagrid didn't pay much attention at first, but seeing Wade staring at it, he said, "Oh, Wade, you are studying alchemy, right? Take it and use it, I still have it if it's not enough." He generously tore off a large handful and gave it directly to Wade. Vader refused. "It's too expensive, Hagrid. A complete unicorn tail hair costs 10 galleons. Ron, who had a straight face, almost fell off the chair. He looked at the white hairs that he thought were horse tails in surprise, and his eyes almost popped out of his head. The Weasley family has 7 children, and they usually live very hard. When he went to school, he didn't even have anything new. He wore the old robes left by his brothers, held an old wand, used old textbooks, and even his pet was an old mouse that his brothers didn't want. As long as Ron has grown up, he has never saved more than 1 galleon of pocket money. It's not worth anything. Hagrid shook his head and said nonchalantly, I often find it in the woods. He forced all the unicorn tail hair to Wade. Hagrid's idea was actually very simple. On the night when the Potters died, it was Hagrid who took the swaddled Harry out of the ruins. At that time, he felt that he had a wonderful sense of responsibility for this weak and soft little life. When Harry was 11 years old, he even went there in person to introduce Harry to the wizarding world. Hagrid looked at Harry with the feeling of a parent looking at his own child. When he learned that Harry was taken care of by Wade at school and learned a lot of useful spells from him, Hagrid had been thinking about how to repay Harry's parents on behalf of him. At this moment, seeing that Wade had something he liked, and he happened to have it too, he naturally gave it away happily. Hagrid's complicated thoughts may not be clearly explained by himself, but Wade felt a little bit. He glanced at Harry, who was unaware of it, and accepted it. It doesn't matter whether the gift is valuable or not, he will always be able to repay it. Look, it's coming out. Hermione suddenly exclaimed. The eggshell cracked open with a crackling sound, and a white nose poked out. Then a black baby dragon struggled to squeeze out. Its spurred wings slapped on the table with a clack, and a few sparks came out of its nose. Chapter 96 Memory. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Almost all newborn animals have a natural sense of cuteness. Even the naked Norwegian Spinosaurus is no exception. When the little guy spreads its wings and spreads its teeth and claws on the table, it doesn't look like an adult dragon at all. The feeling of intimidation is like being coquettish, but when it opens its mouth to reveal its long, slender fangs, the cuteness quickly fades and the threat quietly arises. But in Hagrid's eyes, this little dragon, which was no bigger than his hand, was so cute. He quickly claimed the identity of the dragon's mother, couldn't put it down, touched the little dragon's head, touched his wings, and then was sprayed by the little dragon. An angry fireball. Look, it can breathe fire. Hagrid said proudly as he patted the sparks on his beard. Hagrid. Hermione said worriedly, how fast does the Norwegian Spinosaurus grow? Oh, it doesn't grow very fast. Hagrid said lovingly, but it can only grow to 50 feet when it reaches adulthood. 50 feet. Hermione exclaimed. Yeah, it's really tiny now, isn't it? Hagrid didn't understand Hermione's worries at all. He took a bucket of brandy from the corner, and took out the chicken blood he had prepared in advance, and asked, would any of you want to try feeding it? Harry and Ron raised their hands in unison, while Hermione leaned back, her refusal obvious. Wade was also very interested at first, but seeing the excitement of the two people, he put his hand down and reminded, be careful, its teeth are poisonous. Hagrid first demonstrated how to feed himself, and then handed over this glorious task to the Gryffindor duo. Vader watched for a while, satisfied his curiosity, and then said goodbye, mainly because Hagrid made the hut too hot in order to hatch the baby dragons, and he broke out in a sweat within a few minutes of staying inside. After a while, Hermione also came out. Vader waited for her and said, I thought you were going back to the Gryffindor common room with Harry. Hermione said, that's what I thought. But I think, well, we should give them a space to have a good talk. In the hut, Harry and Ron didn't even look at each other. They took turns feeding Charmander, working together without disturbing each other. Hagrid was chattering beside him about his love for the little one and thinking hard about what to name it. Maybe I should read a book, there will always be answers in books. Hagrid muttered, finding an old book from his cabinet filled with bottles, cans and tin pots, and flipping through the pages with his thick fingers. Find the right name. Harry was absent-mindedly feeding the fire dragon, and he didn't notice that he was a little slow, and the little guy opened his mouth and bit it without hesitation. Careful. Ron slapped Harry's hand away, spilling a spoonful of brandy on the table. Charmander puffed angrily at his keeper, and was about to spit out a fireball. Harry quickly pushed the remaining chicken blood brandy over and let him drink it by himself. The black Charmander plunged into the wine and fluttered around in a panic. He soon discovered that he was surrounded by delicious food and drank with concentration. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, and the deliberately indifferent atmosphere naturally eased. Harry hesitated for a moment and finally said what he had been thinking in his chest for several days. "Ron, I've always wanted to say. I actually wanted to ask a question that day, but the rule of the club is, unless everyone agrees, nothing can be done. Introduce other people to join. I thought, it would be better if I asked other people's opinions privately first." Of course, the first person he asked blocked his attempts, which Harry didn't think he needed to say now. Ron exhaled and relaxed his tense shoulders. "You know what I think? I thought you made some cool friends, but then you started to drift away from us." In fact, Ron was also feeling very uncomfortable during this period. Malfoy also ridiculed him. Why, Harry Potter finally realized that some people couldn't stand up to the stage at all, so did he dump him? I have to say, although he also it was stupid, but it was the right decision. Ron was so angry that he became dizzy and had another fight with Malfoy. His ribs were still aching. But compared with the physical pain, it is more sad that the friends are drifting away. No. Of course not. How could it be? Harry was taken aback and hurriedly denied, saying, "You are the first friend I have ever made." Ron suddenly smiled and asked curiously, "What do you usually do in that club?" After asking, he breathed a sigh of relief. He was finally able to ask this question calmly. Harry explained to him, "SSC is a study group, and we usually write papers together. But after dinner, Vader will teach everyone some spells that are not taught in school, mainly the defense against the dark arts spell. I learned it recently. It's really difficult to learn the disarming spell and the iron armor spell. I only learned it after being injured many times. Do you want to learn it? Is it okay?" Ron was a little worried. Would this violate the rules of the society? "No, Vader said that we can teach others, but the effect of my teaching may not be that good." For Wade, the changes in the friendship between elementary school students were not a big concern for him. He had more important things to do now. Early in the morning of the weekend, Wade came to the outside of the House of Requirement and walked back and forth 3 times, concentrating his mind and thinking, "I need a room with a meditation basin. I need a room with a meditation basin. I need a room with a meditation basin." A simple and narrow mahogany door appeared on the wall, and Wade opened the door and went in. This place looks like the home of an ascetic monk. There are only simple wooden beds and low stools in the room, and there is a half-person high stone pillar next to it. A shallow empty stone basin is placed on it. The edge of the basin is engraved with complex ancient magic words, and there is a circle of thumb-sized gems around it. The gorgeousness is out of place compared to this house. This is the meditation basin, a magical item that can be used to preserve memories and ideas, and even allow people to enter memories and reproduce past scenes. It contains powerful and complex magic. Even Professor Murray said frankly that he could not make a meditation basin. Wade pointed the wand at his temple, chanted the spell in a low voice, and concentrated on recalling those memories that had long been faded by time. After a moment, he removed the wand, and a thin silver thread was pulled, extending from his temple, getting longer and longer. Wade gently rotated the wand, as if collecting spinning thread to roll it up. After a few turns, the silver thread finally broke. It floated gently on the tip of the wand like spider silk, and one end approached the meditation basin. Wade gently tapped the wand on the meditation basin, and the silver thread fell into it, slowly rotating like mist, emitting a faint glow. This is the memory of his previous life that he had almost forgotten. Wade took a deep breath and plunged into the silver memory. Chapter 97 Vanishing Cabinet, Revised Version. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It took Vader a whole day to reconstruct and organize his memories. When he walked out of the room of requirement, the sky had completely darkened. Although the room of requirement and the Ravenclaw lounge are both on high floors, one is in the main tower and the other is on the top floor of Ravenclaw Tower, which is quite a distance in between. Normally, Vader would have used the flying curse to summon a broom to fly over, but today, he was walking slowly along the corridor while sorting out his thoughts and figuring out what he was going to do next. In the long corridor, footsteps echoed emptily. Suddenly a voice broke the silence. "Ha! Surprise! A surprise for you." Peeves suddenly appeared, holding several black water balls in his hand and throwing them at Wade. Vader quickly pulled out his wand and pointed it, and the ink rolled back, and all of it fell on Peeves' face. "Bah, bah, bah, bah." Peeves spat out the ink in his mouth and cursed angrily as he flew away. The corridor was filled with dark ink. Vader was already familiar with the cleaning spell. He waved his wand a few times and all the ink disappeared, leaving the corridor as clean as ever. Someone applauded. "Beautiful silent spell." Wade turned around and looked. "Griffiths." The red-haired wizard once again scurried into someone else's portrait, following him with a smile behind his back. Wade thought about the sudden appearance of Peeves and asked, "Is it possible that Peeves was instigated by you?" "Well, yes." Griffiths admitted very frankly, and said, "I think you seem to have been caught by some time monster, with a deep and scary look on your face, so I asked Peeves to say hello to you. How are you feeling now?" Wade didn't know what his expression was before. He rubbed his face and said helplessly, "Then I really thank you." You're welcome, you should help students." Griffiths said with a smile, and then asked, "What were you thinking before?" Wade didn't want to discuss this topic and asked, "Your relationship with the portrait in the foyer has become better recently?" "They haven't complained to me for a long time." Of course it has gotten better." Griffiths said hesitantly. Wade stopped, frowned and asked, "Could you be?" There were 2 Hufflepuff students who wanted to hear my story about the past just now. I'm leaving now and we'll talk next time." Griffiths raised his voice as if he felt guilty, and then he hurried out of the portrait, not knowing where he went. Vader shook his head. During this time, the name of the chatty Griffiths gradually became known to more students, because he always liked to chat with people, and sometimes he would suddenly appear from a certain portrait and scream, looking frightened. The student fell into the trap on the stairs and laughed like a Peeves ghost, but the students hated Peeves, but not Griffiths. Because in addition to the occasional harmless pranks, he would also tell some stories that were not known to be true or false. Sometimes when he saw a student was in a low mood, he would comfort them and do everything possible to make them laugh. Wade often saw 4 or 5 students gathered around Griffiths' portrait, chatting with him. Griffiths, who has most of his free time taken up by students every day, is so busy that he even does not harass other portraits, much less. Vader originally thought that was the case, but looking at the guilty look on his face just now, it seemed like there was another story. Back in the dormitory, Wade took out the friend account, first talked to his father for a while, and then changed to another friend account, Vade, Remus. After a while, Lu Ping's reply appeared on the paper. "Lupin, I'm here. Vade, I have one thing to ask you. Tomorrow morning, please go to Gringotts with my father to withdraw some money, and then go to Borgenbach store in Nocturne Alley and buy the disappearing cabinet from the store." Lupin, okay. Lupin agreed simply. After a while, he wrote new words, Lupin, but as far as I know, there is only one disappearing cabinet in Borgenbach store, and the other one is missing. If another disappearing cabinet has been damaged, or is in a place where humans cannot normally enter and exit, such as on the seabed or buried deep underground, then such a disappearing cabinet is useless and may even be extremely dangerous to the user. Vade, I know, but there's also a vanishing cabinet in Hogwarts Castle. Vade, it's worth a try, right? Lupin, I understand. But promise me, don't try it yourself. We can experiment with rabbits or something first. Vade, of course, I won't be so reckless. After closing the friend account, Wade felt a little hopeful. The enemy can appear in the safe fortress at any time, which makes people feel no sense of security at all, but if he can leave the castle at any time, it feels wonderful, and he can do more things. Vader had many thoughts lingering in his mind, as well as various changes in the plot, the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, Peter Pettigrew hiding in Gryffindor, the Quidditch World Cup and the Goblet of Fire competition, Barty Crouch. Escaping from prison, Voldemort resurrection, the incompetent Ministry of Magic. There are also Horcruxes hidden by Voldemort in various places, and several methods to destroy Horcruxes. the Sword of Gryffindor, Basilisk Fangs, and Li Hua, I still have to learn the fiery curse. Think about the blazing fire that burned half of Paris by Grindelwald, and Dumbledore waving his wand like the god of fire. If he has the same strength, does he need to be so cautious? Wade wrote down his thoughts on a piece of paper, and after reading it for a while, he rolled the paper into a ball and put it close to the candlelight, watching it gradually burn into ash. The jumping firelight reflected in his pupils, and deep in his eyes. It seemed to be another scene. Hogwarts was flooded by the black mass of Death Eaters, trolls and eight-eyed giant spiders were rampaging, and corpses were lying on the cold ground. Under the war, life is so fragile, and there are those that are not played out in the plot. After Dumbledore's death, Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic were almost occupied by the followers of the Dark Lord, and the three protagonists had to flee. In that short and long year, how many non-pure-blood wizards were persecuted? What about Muggles? And what about the Squibs that no one cares about? Did they survive because they were weak, or because they were weak? Even if they were killed, they would only become a string of cold numbers in the newspaper. Wade suddenly saw the smiling faces of Ferdinand and Fiona, and then the other two faces that were already blurred in his memory. Trying to smile in sadness, he covered his eyes with his palms and sighed tiredly. He revised the content of the chapter. Chapter 98 Roar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lupin was very efficient, and he told Vader at noon the next day that he had bought the Vanishing Cabinet from Borgin and Burks. At the same time, Vader borrowed the Vanishing Cabinet in the castle from Professor McGonagall on the pretext of studying alchemy, and promised that he knew the dangers involved and would not get into it randomly. The Vanishing Cabinet is a black and gold cabinet with many ancient magic texts and various wonderful patterns engraved on it. Ancient magic forms a wonderful passage between the two disappearing cabinets. Even in Hogwarts, where apparition is prohibited, people can achieve the magic of instant movement through the two disappearing cabinets. In the plot, the Death Eaters invaded Hogwarts along this passage, and Dumbledore also died that night. Vader used the shrinking spell to bring the Vanishing Cabinet to the Room of Requirement, and then found time to conduct experiments. He communicated with Lupin through the friend's account, put various things into the disappearing cabinet, and then took them out from the other end. The first few experiments went smoothly. Apples, bread, pillows, buckets and other things were put in and they were all intact when taken out. Lupin also suggested using living animals to conduct experiments: rats, rabbits, pig monsters. The size is getting closer and closer to humans, and they are gradually replaced by magical creatures. The experiment went awry on the 13th occasion. Wade felt something was wrong when he opened the cabinet door. After opening the door, he found a dwarf pig monster lying inside that had stopped breathing. Vade, it's dead. Lupin, what happened? Vade, there are no wounds, but breathing has stopped. You can take a look over there. Vader closed the cupboard door again, then Lupin opened it and saw the cold body of the piggish. He moved it out and examined it carefully. Lupin, the body was very cold, as if it had been dead for at least 3 or 4 hours. There were strange cracks on the surface of the skin, and the bones became brittle than biscuits. The moment it closed the door, it seemed to go to a strange place, and then died there. Lupin, Vader, the Vanishing Cabinet is more dangerous than we thought. Vade, I understand. The experiment is on hold while I see if I can repair this cabinet. When he put down his pen, Wade couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He thought that the Vanishing Cabinet was broken by Peeves when Harry was in second year, but he did not expect that it was not intact before being broken. He stared at the disappearing cabinet with all his concentration. Slowly, countless golden magic lines emerged like running water. Complex magic arrays were stacked layer by layer. Hundreds of ancient magic words were wrapped around the disappearing cabinet like chains, tiny flaws, incomplete lines, runes worn by time, magic that seems to be corroded. He found the missing parts of the disappearing cabinet bit by bit. Umbrella House, the actual combat training was over, and everyone applied bruise healing ointment to each other. Harry asked, Vader seems to be very busy recently. He only comes to the Umbrella House once every 3 or 4 days. Every time he comes, he spends about an hour teaching them a new spell and pointing out the problems they encounter in learning, and then disappears quickly. Yes. Michael said helplessly, the alchemy professor seems to have left a very difficult assignment for Wade. Recently, he rarely even comes back to the restroom, and always stays elsewhere to study alchemy. Cleaning crabs crawled over, collected all the tampon balls, and mopped the floor. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but follow it around. They didn't leave the umbrella house until the crab returned to its shell nest and lay down quietly. As soon as I walked down the next floor, I met an unexpected person. How are you? Professor Quirrell seemed to be startled by this encounter. With a shy smile on his face, he stretched out his hand and whispered hello to his students. Michael, Hermione and Ryan reflexively lowered their heads and said, "Good evening, Professor." Harry and Theo said generously, "Hi, Professor Quirrell." Neville was a step behind, and he hurriedly said hello. When the two sides were about to separate, Harry added an extra sentence, "Come on, Professor." "You are really brave." Professor Quirrell smiled briefly and nervously, stretched out his hand and waved slightly. "You." Hermione stared at Harry with 1,000 words in her eyes. Theo said directly, "Harry, do you think Professor Quirrell is, brave? There is no more timid professor in the whole school than Quirrell." "You don't understand." Harry said deeply, as if he was hiding a lot of secrets in his heart. "Professor Quirrell is fighting against evil. He is really amazing." Although Theo and Neville didn't understand, they nodded in confusion. The others looked at each other with incomprehensible expressions. "Keep an eye on him and don't let them get close again," Michael said in a low voice. Everyone nodded silently, feeling that they were burdened with a heavy responsibility. Harry didn't know about other people's worries. He returned to the dormitory with joy as always, shared what he had learned today with Ron, played wizard chess for a while, and then went to bed, but for some reason, the scar on his forehead hurts tonight. While everyone else fell asleep, Harry couldn't sleep. He simply put on his coat and sat in front of the window, looking at the starry night scene outside. Suddenly, a black shadow passed through his vision, and Harry reacted for a moment before he realized that it was a person flying through the sky on a broomstick. Who was that? What was he doing flying over the school in the middle of the night? Harry found his Nimbus 2000 without thinking, rode on the broomstick through the window, and jumped down from the 8th floor of the castle. He quickly descended in the air, and soon pulled up the altitude again, hovering in the sky for a while, and found a figure by the Black Lake. Harry went around from a high altitude, and when he got close, he found that the person standing there was actually Wade. "Hi, Wade." Harry dropped his broom and walked over, asking, "Why are you here?" "Harry?" Wade turned around, also a little surprised. "It's so late, why haven't you slept yet?" "I can't sleep." Harry touched the scar on his forehead and said, "I don't know why, I have a headache today, maybe Snape is cursing me under the Black Lake." Wade's eyes swept across the lightning-shaped scar and answered the previous question. "I was about to go back to sleep at night, and suddenly I saw that there seemed to be a white-haired person here. But when I flew over, I found that he was gone." He was not sure whether the figure he saw tonight was the same as the one he saw more than half a year ago, but for some reason, Wade always cared about this matter. Maybe because the distance was too far, he had never seen the name of that person. Harry scratched his hair, without thinking too much, guessed, "Maybe you saw it wrong." "Maybe." Wade did not argue. He saw Hagrid holding an oil lamp and his hound Fawn, taking advantage of the night to walk into the Forbidden Forest. "It looks like Hagrid hasn't slept yet," Wade said. "He should have gone to feed Norbert, right?" Harry said casually. "Norbert?" Wade suddenly turned his head and looked at him. "Yes." "Oh, that baby dragon. Hagrid named it Norbert." Harry explained, "It grew bigger and bigger, and it was impossible to keep it in the wooden house. Hagrid moved it to a cave in the Forbidden Forest." Wade was surprised, didn't send it away. Harry sighed helplessly. Hermione persuaded him several times, and Ron also said that his brother Charlie was studying dragons in Romania, and Norbert could be sent there for them to take care of, but Hagrid said he couldn't bear to do it. Roar! In the Forbidden Forest, a huge roar suddenly sounded, and a beam of fire suddenly shot out and rushed straight into the sky. Chapter 99, Dense Forest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The roar of the fire dragon suddenly sounded, suddenly tearing apart the peaceful night sky of Hogwarts. Hagrid, Harry shouted, immediately got on his broom and flew out. Gryffindor. Wade sighed helplessly. Hagrid had just entered the Forbidden Forest, and was at least a mile away from where the fire appeared. There was no danger whatsoever. Vader also rode on his broom and entered the Forbidden Forest. He raised the height and used his good eyesight to walk between the black canopies. In front, Hagrid was holding the wine barrel, shouting the name Noble, and running rampantly in the Forbidden Forest towards the direction of the fire, with his hound following closely behind. When Harry saw that Hagrid was fine, he had already flown towards the fire dragon first. They were all very fast, and soon they arrived at a cave. Wade saw Harry standing aside with a pale face, and Norbert, who was as big as a house, fell to the ground, with huge and ferocious wounds on his eyes and chest, and bright red blood flowing gurglingly. Norbert, Hagrid screamed in grief and rushed to hug his baby dragon, trembling to test whether it was still breathing. Several sparks that seemed to be extinguished came out of Noble's nose. Don't be afraid, good baby. Mommy will treat you right now. Hagrid's palms were trembling as he rummaged through his pockets for healing potions. Vader was still in the air, scanning his surroundings warily. The black forest was silent. The roar of the fire dragon made all the small sounds disappear. At this moment, there was only the sound of wind, Hagrid's wailing, and the crackling sound of dead branches burning in the fire. Vader fired 2 red spark signals into the sky, and placed detection spells around the area before landing. Hagrid was pouring white moss essence onto Noble's wound, but the blood was like an open faucet, quickly washing away all the potion. This is a wound caused by black magic. Ordinary healing potions are useless. Vader said. He pointed his wand at Noble's wound and recited the counter curse in a low voice. Luckily he had just learned it from Remus 2 days ago, and half a minute later, the bleeding was finally stopped. Hagrid watched helplessly, and only now did he dare to ask, "Is he okay?" "No." Vader said, "I can only do this to this extent, and I have to find more professional people to do the rest. But at least, his life should be saved." "Thank you, Vader, thank you so much." Hagrid burst into tears. "If Norbert dies, it will feel like my heart has been ripped away." He hugged the ferocious head of the Norwegian spiny-backed dragon tightly. The dragon opened its eyes feebly, watching Hagrid cry loudly, and sprayed hot gas from its nose. "What happened here?" A cold, seemingly angry voice sounded nearby, making Harry's face turn pale as he was in a daze. Snape, wearing black robes, walked out of the darkness. He stared at everyone as if he wanted to drain their blood. The black robe was swaying behind him like a dark cloud, as if he was not running over, but flying over. Immediately afterwards, a spotted cat jumped down from the branch, and when it landed, it had transformed into Professor McGonagall in pajamas. She looked at the situation at the scene and suddenly screamed, "An injured fire dragon. What's going on?" Before Harry could answer, someone else appeared, Professor Quirrell, who stumbled through the woods holding a scarf, and Dumbledore, who suddenly appeared with a burst of fire. Suddenly, this scene is very similar to that of Halloween, except that Professor Flitwick is missing and replaced by Dumbledore. Only, Harry's body was trembling slightly and he subconsciously took 2 steps in Hagrid's direction. "Someone hurt Norbert, Dumbledore." Hagrid took out his big handkerchief and wiped his tears, and said in a tearful voice, "Please save him, this child is seriously injured." Dumbledore leaned over and looked at Norbert. The wounds caused by dark magic had obvious characteristics, but the wounds had a tendency to shrink. Dumbledore was only slightly surprised, and soon understood who among the 3 people present was capable of doing this. "A very beautiful dark magic countercurse, Mr. Grey." Dumbledore praised. Wade bowed and said nothing. "Don't worry, Hagrid." Dumbledore said gently, "Madame Pomfrey will cure her. Minerva, please find a suitable place for this child." "Okay." Professor McGonagall was staring at the 2 students sternly. After hearing Dumbledore's instructions, she looked back and took Norbert away with the levitating spell. "Slow down, Professor McGonagall." Hagrid couldn't help but warn, he's still a baby. It's all my fault for not taking good care of him. Private dragons are prohibited. Snape said sarcastically from the side, Hagrid, I thought you knew this. Hagrid bit his lip, his huge body looking pitiful. We'll talk about this later. Dumbledore said calmly, Harry, Vader, why are you two here? Running out of the castle at night and coming to the dangerous Forbidden Forest is not a wise move. I couldn't sleep at night. I was in the dormitory, looking at the starry sky and so on. Harry suddenly stammered, I accidentally saw Hagrid walking into the Forbidden Forest, and then I heard the cry of the fire dragon, and there was fire. I was worried that something had happened to Hagrid, so I flew over to take a look, and then Wade came too. He ignored the fact that the two broke curfew first and ran around the school. Did you see what hurt the dragon? Dumbledore asked. Harry shivered, as if still scared. Wade said, no. When we came, the scene was already like this. Dumbledore nodded and looked at the pool of blood on the scene. He didn't know what he was thinking. Everyone else waited with bated breath. In the cave, the sound of footsteps suddenly came out, and a white, holy creature walked out of it. Its whole body was emitting a shimmering light, its long legs were limping, and silver-white blood flowed along its body. The body drips down. Merlin! Hagrid exclaimed, how dare that man hurt a unicorn? That the unicorn knelt before Dumbledore, then leaned over to Hagrid, as if asking for his help. Dumbledore used a spell to heal the unicorn's wound and said to Hagrid, send it to Madame Pomfrey too. Take Vader and Harry with you, I think they need a drink tranquilizer. Hagrid nodded, picked up the unicorn without hesitation, and greeted, come with me, children, thank you for worrying about my safety. But I have to say, this is too dangerous, really very dangerous, don't run around again next time. Harry responded hummingly, and when he turned around, he saw Snape frowning, as if he wanted to object to Dumbledore letting them go so lightly, but Dumbledore said, Severus, Quilly Nass, can you please patrol around the Forbidden Forest tonight? Maybe the guy who injured the fire dragon is still wandering around here. Of course, for safety, you'd better not separate. The dense forest blocked Harry's view. Chapter 100 Infirmary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Madame Pomfrey's healing magic is very good, and the medicine in the medical room is also very complete. After pouring down several bottles of magic potion, the fire dragon and unicorn, who were originally in pain from their wounds, calmed down and soon fell into a deep sleep. Professor McGonagall was preparing to temporarily place the fire dragon in the Quidditch pitch. She was busy setting up a barrier with spells around it to prevent students from accidentally breaking in and being harmed by the fire dragon. The unicorn was able to rest near Professor Sprout's greenhouse, and the fat which happily prepared many berries and fresh oat grass for the unicorn. Other professors also came after hearing the news. It was the first time that Hogwarts was so lively late at night. Fire dragon, that a strange little old man rushed to Norbert's side with gleaming eyes. His body was covered with scars, and both legs and one arm were wooden prostheses. At this moment, he used his only remaining hand to caress Nob's black wings and said excitedly, Hagrid, you should have told me you raised a dragon. Professor McGonagall, who had set up the barrier, came over and said angrily with a straight face, Professor Kettleburn, raising dragons in private is a serious violation of law. The fearful anger of everyone in Hogwarts seemed to have no effect on the little old man. He smiled slyly and said, don't be so rigid, Minerva. Where is anyone raising a dragon illegally? It's obviously a dragon living in the Forbidden Forest. A wild baby dragon broke into Hogwarts because it was hungry, and our kind gamekeeper just fed it a little food. It's not illegal at all. Oh, it can still be like this. Hagrid tapped his palm in sudden realization. Please stop encouraging illegal behavior, Professor Kettleburn. Don't forget that you are still on probation. Professor McGonagall was originally very serious, but she laughed as she spoke. Yes, 62 probationary periods. But it doesn't matter, I'm about to retire anyway. Professor Kettleburn spread his hands and said, then approached the fire dragon again and asked, this child has a name. Hagrid? His name is Norbert. Hagrid said proudly, I saw him come out of the shell with my own eyes. He. Professor Kettleburn was stunned, looked at it carefully twice, and then smiled. It should be she. This is a little girl. What? Hagrid was shocked and stepped forward, while Professor Kettleburn began to teach him how to identify the gender of a young dragon. In that case, wouldn't it be bad to call her Norbert? Hagrid quickly entered the silly dad with a daughter mode, as if he was worried that his baby daughter would be discriminated against because of her name. It's better to call it Norberta. Professor Kettleburn suggested, it sounds like a girl's name, and it's very cute. Oh, you too, make it easy for me to find you. Madame Pomfrey suddenly appeared, stared at Vader and Harry and said hurriedly, come with me, Dumbledore said you might need a bottle of tranquilizer agent. No, we weren't frightened, Wade said, but Madame Pomfrey didn't listen at all. She took the two of them to the school doctor's office, stuffed a bottle of tranquilizer into each of their hands without any explanation, and said, drink the medicine, and then go to bed early. It won't be long before dawn. Hour. When Wade saw it, he realized that this was the potion he had brewed himself. Is Dumbledore back? Harry asked hurriedly when he saw that she was leaving. How should I know that, child? Madame Pomfrey said. But you said, he told you we needed sedatives. Harry demanded stubbornly. Dumbledore sent his Patronus to inform me. What is a patron saint? Drink the potion and go to sleep, child. Under Madame Pomfrey's oppressive smiling gaze, the two of them had no choice but to drink the sedative in one sip, and sleep quickly came over them. The next morning, although no one had deliberately publicized it, it seemed that the entire school knew what had happened last night. They all ran to watch the fire dragon and unicorn. After walking around, the SSC members learned that Wade and Harry were also involved, and ran to the school doctor's office to find them. I heard that someone attacked the fire dragon. Hermione rushed in and said worriedly, are you okay, did you run into that guy? Don't worry about the fire dragon for now. Harry looked around and said, I have a secret I want to tell you about the attacker last night. Wait, Harry. Michael interrupted him suddenly, walked to the door, looked outside, and then closed the door. Ryan reacted and walked to the window to make sure no one was standing outside eavesdropping. Wade asked, did you see that guy? Yes, I went a little earlier than you. I saw that person's appearance. He was. Harry couldn't help but shuddered and said, Professor Quirrell. The room suddenly fell into dead silence. Harry was a little anxious and said hurriedly, maybe you think I'm lying, but no. In fact, I overheard it a few weeks ago, in the woods. It was the Quidditch match and the day Gryffindor won. I heard Snape threatening Quirrell to cooperate with him in order to steal the magic stone hidden on the 4th floor. They were also the first to arrive in the Forbidden Forest. Theo asked, I heard that Professor McGonagall was here first. You weren't there, so you didn't see it. Professor McGonagall was still wearing pajamas when she arrived. She was obviously woken up by the dragon. Harry tried to explain the basis of his reasoning, but Snape and Quirrell, they were dressed neatly, and they might have wandered in the Forbidden Forest before, and even attacked Norbert and the unicorn. It was only later that Hagrid arrived that they had to run away, and then pretended to be awakened and ran over, but they didn't have time to change into suitable clothes. No one spoke for a while. In silence, Neville looked around and said something to make conversation. Harry, I see you are particularly enthusiastic about Professor Quirrell recently. I thought you liked him very much. I thought he was fighting against Snape. Harry said in annoyance, I wanted to encourage him to be tenacious. I didn't expect him to side with Snape so quickly. Looking at the complicated expressions of the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a little irritated, and couldn't help raising his voice and said, are you trying to say that they are professors, people Dumbledore trusts, so they won't do that? But I really... Harry, calm down. Wade suddenly interrupted his shouting, and his flat voice was like a basin of cold water, extinguishing Harry's excitement. He looked at Wade, but saw that Wade was looking at others. Tell him about that matter. Wade said, Harry has learned this much, and telling the truth is not considered that we have violated our agreement with Dumbledore. Harry was stunned. Tell me, what?